Good evening and welcome. I'm Mary, and tonight I'll be taking you on a magical adventure to find the leprechaun's pot of gold, which we all know, of course, can be found at the end of the rainbow. The leprechaun is one of Ireland's most favourite characters from Irish folklore. They have become renowned all over the world. The mischievous Irish leprechaun has captured the imagination of millions of people over the years, with tales from some of how they sighted these wee folks in the Irish countryside. The leprechaun is part of Irish mythology, and they are known as wee folk or the little people, often seen with a cocked hat and leather apron. Solitary by nature, he is said to live in remote places and to make shoes and brogues. The sound of his hammering often betrays his presence. Standing 2 to 3 feet tall, leprechauns are devious little characters. They are quick-witted, highly intelligent, and will do anything to evade capture. The leprechaun is known to inhabit Ireland before the arrival of the Celts and can survive hundreds of years. Some consider leprechauns to be the true natives of Ireland who are descended from Irish royalty. The leprechaun can be found in Ireland in rural areas away from the general population, burrowed deep in underground caves with entrances hidden as rabbit holes, or found in a hollow trunk of a fairy tree. They find safety away from humans who seek to capture them to be granted a wish. The leprechaun is well known for their love of Irish music and traditional dance. They often hold ceilidhs that can last for days. They are expert musicians when it comes to playing the tin whistle, the fiddle, bodhrán, and even the Irish harp. There is a misconception that leprechauns are drunkards. However, they do have a fondness of drinking Irish potchie. Catching one of the little folk is no easy task, and it's often discouraged. They're quick, smart, and have magical powers to vanish into thin air, but they can be caught. It's believed that if you're lucky enough to catch a leprechaun, he'll grant you a wish. However, the captor is usually tricked into glancing away, and the leprechaun vanishes. When my little boys see a rainbow, they get very excited about finding the elusive leprechaun and his hidden pot of gold. One day in Ireland, we were lucky enough to stumble across a fairy garden and a leprechaun. Ireland is full of little magical gardens. I hope you enjoy our journey now as we try to find our very own before he gets the chance to disappear. I very much hope you enjoy this story. Sleep tight and good night. Or in Gaelic, I ha wa. begin the pot of gold. Dan Kelly lived alone. He didn't have a wife, for no girl would marry him. He was lazy and untidy. Not for him the hard work and neat farms of his neighbours. His fields were full of weeds, gates sagged, his cattle rambled the roads. Dan preferred to spend his time dreaming. He had great plans. One day he would be rich and have everything he could wish for. Some bit of luck was sure to happen. This morning, though, he was up early. It was a feast day, and there would be sports and dancing in Ballycahill. He put on his only suit, then reached for a tie, his best red silk one. A flick of the comb, and he was ready. It was a long walk to Ballycahill. At first the road passed along by his own farm. It didn't bother him that neighbours' fields teemed with full ripe crops of oats and barley. There they were, poor things, slaving away while he was off on a day's outing. Clouds of dust flurried his shoes as he walked, then a shoelace loosened. He stopped to tie it. Tick, tack, tick. What was the noise in the field beside him? Puzzled, he listened. Tick, tack, tick. Was it a grasshopper? No, this was louder and sharper. Was it a thrush, smashing a snail's shell against a stone? No, this was completely different. On tiptoe, Dan peered through the hedge. What he saw almost caused him to stumble into the briars. Then in the field sat the smallest man you could imagine. His hat was red with a white feather in it, and he wore a little leather apron. A leprechaun. Dan gave a great big grin. Here surely was the bit of luck he had been waiting for. Straightening his tie, he clambered clumsily through the hedge. There was a loud rip on the seat of his pants. But what harm? Soon he would be buying a new suit. The leprechaun looked up as Dan stepped into the field. "Good morning, Dan," he said. "Are you going to the fair of Ballycahill?" "I was on my way," said Dan, "when I heard you working, so I thought I'll stop for a minute." "You're very welcome," said the leprechaun politely. "Sit down and rest yourself. There's a rock there behind you." Dan he looked away even for a second, the leprechaun would vanish. He's a crafty little fellow, thought Dan. I'll have to be careful. So he just stood where he was. That's a great little shoe you're making, he said. It is indeed, said the leprechaun. There's a big ball tonight in Lisagreal. It's a pair of dancing shoes for the Queen of the Fairies. Dan had never seen anything so lovely. They're gorgeous, he said. But it isn't shoes I'm looking for. I didn't think it was, sighed the leprechaun. No, indeed, said Dan. I'm after your pot of gold. Everyone knows that leprechauns have loads of money. Pot of gold? Laughed the leprechaun. You must be joking. Why do you think I'm sitting here working while the rest of the world is feasting and merry-making? Your world isn't my world, said Dan, and while you're working, it's none of my business. But it's my field you're sitting in, and I want the gold this instant. And a poor bit of the field it is too, remarked the leprechaun. Look at it, full of poisonous ragwort, and all the seeds blowing in on your neighbours. Ah, you should be ashamed of yourself. The gold, screeched Dan in a terrible temper. He heard plenty of complaints about his fields already. The gold! Get me the pot of gold! And he snatched the little man up in a vicious grip. Let me go, squealed the leprechaun. I'm meeting in the middle. You have the breath squeezed out of me. I'll let you go when you show me where the pot of gold is, roared Dan. All right, I'll show you, croaked the leprechaun. Just put me down. Dan dropped him roughly on the grass. With his hat squashed sideways, the leprechaun hopped across to a clump of ragwort. It's under here, he said sulkily. Dan groaned. He had no spade, and the field was dotted with 10,000 clumps of ragworm. Sweat ran down his face, and he loosened his collar. At once an idea came to him. He grinned, then taking off his tie, he knotted it round the piece of ragwort. I'm going home for a spade, he said to the leprechaun. Will you promise me on your honour that you will not move that tie? I promise, said the leprechaun. For a lazy man, Dan Kelly could move very quickly. In minutes he was home and back again. But when he reached the field, the spade clattered from his hand. The leprechaun was gone, and red ties fluttered cheerfully on 10,000 clumps of ragwort. Dan Kelly didn't go to the fair that day. He spent the afternoon sewing the seat of his trousers. Once or twice he thought he heard someone laughing, but it was only the wind in the chimney. He never did buy another suit, but he had plenty of ties to wear to the fair of Ballycahill. That concludes tonight's story, Cuddle del Sol, Good Night, by Aneha Lugan Lochra. Night will be upon us very soon. Cuddle ge law, sleep tightly.